are back. Too many men in the huddle. I'm Cheech.
I'm Shay.
Shay, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. Been missing this. Let's
Yeah,
go.
me too. I'm ready. Lots to get to today. We got the NFL trade deadline coming up. So we're gonna go over buyers and sellers of the league, who we think teams that should buy, should sell. Also, the top 10 coming up, but we'll begin with sellers. And Shay, you have a list of a couple teams that you want to get to. So why don't you get us started, bud?
Okay. The first team on this list is the Giants. I know the Giants are only a game and a half out of the division, even with their record, but let's just be honest. They haven't done well against the NFC East other than Washington. They barely won that game. If they're being realistic with their rebuild, first year new head coach, um, they need to unload some veterans. I see people like Golden Tate. You can probably like fetch like a sixth or seventh round pick for him. Um, he's probably going to get cut in the offseason. Just go ahead, move him now. Kevin Zeitler, we talked about him in the last show and how he's regressed, but he's still a solid veteran guard, and those are hard to come by. Another guy, he has like a $12 million salary next season for a
Yeah.
guard. They're going to cut him
Mm.
anyways at like next off season. So maybe move him to a contender that can use a little offensive line help. Those two are definites in my mind. The other three players that are possibilities because some of them have longer contracts, they're younger, are Sterling Shepard. When he's on the field, he's probably one of like the top 10 slot receivers, I would say, in the league. He's had concussion issues. He is back. He had a good game last week. He'd be someone maybe a contender as like a third option. Would love to have Evan Ingram, all the talent in the world, stretch the field. He's a receiving only tight end. I don't think the Giants are using him correctly. They still have his 5th year option. They picked that up for next year, and they can still hold out hope. It's his 4th year. Maybe move on. He actually has a lot of interest around the league. I would not take lower than a third or fourth round pick for him. And then another player, if you don't follow the Giants, you're not in the NFC East, you may not know who Dalvin Tomlinson is. But the Giants have actually, over the last 20 years, been really good at developing interior defensive linemen. Dalvin Thomas is no different. He's in the last year of his rookie deal. They're going to have to decide to either re sign him or re sign Leonard Williams. And to me, Leonard Williams shows more pass rush ability than Tomlinson. So he could be another person you can fetch maybe like a fourth or fifth or sixth. These might be low picks, but you need assets. Just keep adding those assets up. You can use them in trades. What is your first team, Alex?
Yeah, sure. So my first team that I have is the Atlanta Falcons. We kind of all saw this coming. Preseason, I had them going to the NFC divisional game against my Vikings. So the NFC,
Laugh at you.
yeah. So the NFC is just wrecked for me. So they both started at 1-5, but the Falcons are my first sell team. And here is something that I was just looking up. Matt Ryan is owed 59.75 million over the next 3 years, but this year he's only owed 15.3 million guaranteed for this year. So if the Falcons do decide to sell him, he would only be owed 15 million this season. There are a lot of teams out there who are in need of just a quarterback, hint hint, the Bears or other teams that could just use a solid player under center to get them, to not turn the ball over. And I know Ryan has had his difficulties with turning the ball over this year, but he's also been in a lot of come from behind situations. Looking at it right now to sell Julio Jones as well. There's an article saying that the Falcons are not um, sellers. So I have a hard time figuring out why they would want to keep all their players, even though they're not going anywhere this season. I think that Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are the top two names of the Falcons roster that they could look to sell. And for Ryan, you could get a first and a second, I'd assume. Same thing with Julio. Because these guys, even though they're at the end of their rope, we say the end of their rope, they could still produce. I think the Falcons are definitely the number one seller team, in my opinion, Shay. And who's your next one that you have on the list?
I have the Bengals. Can I make one comment about Atlanta?
Yeah.
I agree with you, Julio. Julio is tradable. He's still valuable. The thing with Matt Ryan, he might be only owed 15 million this year, but all his guaranteed money for the next 2 years accelerates to this year against the Falcons. So they would
You,
have like, yeah, like it would be like a massive, massive salary cap hit.
it would be,
Um,
but you got to fix Shay. The teams who like the Bears are a step away.
cap room though. They don't
Okay,
have any cap room. Atlanta couldn't do it. Is what I'm saying.
right. I hear you. It's still, it could happen. Let's just put it at
Yeah,
that. It could.
a lot of maneuvering, but yeah, I agree. Um, Going on to my next team, and I'll let you make some comments on it too. I had the Bengals. I actually had Carlos Dunlap. Well, they took my advice without even knowing it. They already traded him,
Yep.
so good job on them. Another player that I think is getting towards the end of his rope and wasn't really playing well until the last couple games. He kind of recovered is AJ Green. I think on a contender, he can be a really good number two at this point in his career. Um, that team is building. They have a young quarterback. They have receivers such as like Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. They have running back and like Mixon. They're young and upcoming with Burrow at quarterback. Someone like AJ Green, like I don't see where he fits in their long term plan. So I think they should move him. Another player who's been productive throughout his career. They probably want to get much for him because he did miss the first 4 games of the year. He's a little bit older. Is Geno Atkins, probably one of the most underrated pass rushing interior defensive linemen of the last like decade. I think maybe on a contender, like in a rotation, he could actually be really useful. And honestly, at this point, they just need to collect assets,
Mm.
get younger. They've already like taken that step. This is going to be the shocker. I actually have the Patriots. Yeah.
Oh.
So we've been talking about how, we've been fondling Belichick's balls, but even he can't make this work with this team. I think their defense is very talented, especially in the secondary, but they kind of need to strip it down. Like Cam Newton was working the first few weeks. Like in my mind, they might still be like an 8-8, 9-7 team, squeak in the playoffs. But is that their long term goal to just be okay? Um, I think they can get a lot for Stephon Gilmore. He's still young enough. He's still a premier shutdown corner. Turn over that salary now, make room for next year, and then also get draft picks in return. Um, their guard that they franchise tagged, he's making 14 million, but obviously, he they are not eligible to re-sign him at this point. It's past that tender. He can actually they can trade him a veteran guard. We talked about offensive lineman with Zeitler getting traded from the Giants. Um, Tooney is another guard that would actually be like great addition to any contender on the offensive line. And then I put the McCourty twins.
Wow.
Uh,
I saw that
yeah,
the Patriots are looking to trade them for something.
yeah, they're both a little bit older. That's the only issue. So again, a contender going for it now, going for it in the next 2 years, they would be fine. So to me, just kind of clear some of those like older, bigger, bloated contracts off their payroll, get some more draft picks, and then just moving on with the McCourty twins. They're older, clear them off the books. They can go to a contender. Someone that's trying to win this year or next year, they'd be fine considering their age. The Patriots are rebuilding. They've been secretly rebuilding. I was actually really shocked they signed Cam late. We talked about this.
Yep.
But for me, they're the surprise seller. They could make the playoffs, but to me, is it really worth it where they're at? I think they should move on. So, who are your last sellers?
That's a crazy one, Shay. I mean, I like the idea that the Patriots are rebuilding, I guess, because it kind of gives Belichick an excuse to not do too well this year. It's Cam's first year in the league, Cam's first year on the team, rather. I'm sorry. It's Cam's first year trying to learn the playbook. So it's okay. And he had COVID, you know what I'm saying? So he really didn't get those extra reps in. So if the Patriots don't do too well, it's not Belichick's fault. So I kind of like it going forward. A seller that people will be shocked with, I guess, because of the division that they're in. I know you have the Giants as sellers. I have the Cowboys as sellers. Look, dead last in defense, dead last in yards per game allowed, dead last in points per game allowed. The defense, and they got rid of Griffin. Okay. If you get rid of your best defensive player, what are you really doing on the defense, right? So I think that the Cowboys are sellers, and an offensive player that I think they could sell is Amari Cooper, and they have Michael Gallup. So if you trade Cooper, you could get good, solid picks, and you upgrade your defense, because their offense, if you look at the receivers to the running back to the quarterback with Dak healthy, their offense is probably the most explosive offense in the league. Yeah, you can name players all over the place on the offense. Then when you go to the O line, it's getting older and everyone's hurt. Martin, I think, just got hurt too, Zach Martin. And then you look at the defense and there's no one, and you have Trayvon Diggs. I mean, these guys are going to get better as time goes on. But right now, I think the Cowboys are absolute sellers. The number for Cooper that you would have to pay, the hard numbers, trading Cooper this week would mean $6 million dead money in 2020. So it's not too problematic, right, to try to pay Cooper on the contract that he has with the Cowboys. And you could get solid picks for him as well. Someone like the Packers, I think, that needs a number one, number two receiver outside of Devontae Adams would be a good, team to try to grab Cooper with. And another seller that I have is the 1-5 Minnesota Vikings, even though my stupid general manager, Rick Spielman, just said that we are not tanking and we're still in playoff contention. I don't understand why he's saying that. You look at the NFC West, every single team in the NFC West is over 500. The Niners are 4-3. The Cardinals are 5-2. The Seattle's 5-1. I have the Rams are 5-2. I have no idea why Spielman would say that we're still in contention this season. One of those teams is clearly going to get the 7th wild card spot, so we're completely out. And I'm looking. Harrison Smith is definitely a player that we could trade. He's in the last. He has one more year on his contract. Harrison Smith is definitely worth, I don't know, maybe a second and third rounder, I'd assume. He's still one of the best safeties in the game. On to buyers, and I think that a couple of your buyers will kind of shock some folks. So why don't you go on with your first buyer team, Shay?
Okay. So for buyers, we talked about the NFC least a lot. I think the Eagles are in the driver's seat. I don't really see Washington with their quarterback situation gaining ground. I do like their front seven, and I do like Ron Rivera as a head coach. Kudos to him. He finished his cancer treatment this week.
Yes, that was
And
awesome.
then that's just great news. Like, forget football. That's awesome. But I think the Eagles are on the driver's seat. I think the Eagles, with a win this week against the Cowboys, could really cement their place as like the best team in that division. I still think they've had these issues for a few years, mostly because of injuries. They need to get a receiver in there. I know they have an undrafted guy, Fulgham, who has jumped from team to team that's playing well for them, but they really just need to solidify that position. They went after in the draft of Jalen Rieger. I know that was not a popular pick, especially because Van Jefferson was on the board, and we'll see how that's working. Or Justin Jefferson of the Vikings. A lot of Jeffersons this year's draft. They passed on him for Rieger. So wide receiver, absolutely need to go after that. And then DBs anywhere in their secondary. They could really use it. That's a position they've struggled at for years now. Again, they've drafted a bunch of guys. They just have not panned out. They've not worked. My next buyer is the Bills. I think the Bills are the clear contender to win their division. They're up by a few games. Miami's just trailing them. And Miami's coming on strong, but they've made a quarterback change. It looks like they're looking towards the future. The Bills, I don't really like their running backs. I know they were in on Lev Bell, and he ended up going to the Chiefs. If they can just find a more like solid running back than Singletary or Moss, I think that would be a great idea. Edge rushers, always a need. Every single team, you can never have enough of them. As a Giants fan, I know that. Like, just load it up, get as many pass rushers as you can. And then final one, I think this team's kind of a surprise team. I picked them to go to the playoffs this season, but they've even like outdone my expectation. The Cardinals, I think they could really use some edge players, some more corners, anything like that they can add to their defense. I love their offense the way it is. Um, People don't realize their offensive line is actually performing at a really high level. They have two running backs with Drake and Edmonds, even though Drake just got hurt. Kyler Murray is playing great. Um, DeAndre Hopkins, what a steal of a trade. But I think they just need a little bit more to just put them over the top, to go from a playoff contender to someone that can actually challenge this year in the NFC.
That's great. And, speaking of the Cardinals, I know, we have our own teams, but I also had the Cardinals as buyers in the trade deadline for the trade deadline as well. You noted edge rushers, right? Corners, their O-line is very underrated. They're scoring very highly as well. Drake and Edmonds are great running backs. I love the Cardinals as, and I know you said Drake just got hurt, but I love the Cardinals as buyers as well. And that division, it's going to be very difficult. So, like I said, whoever doesn't win that division is getting the second, or the sixth and seventh wild card spot. I mean, it's probably just the way it's going to happen. So, I agree with the Cardinals. The other team that I was going to say is probably going to shock some people. I had the 3-3 Lions. We touched on this before the season started, Shay. Like, they could be that 8-8, 9-7 team. Highly doubt 10-6, but maybe on the cusp of that to try to make the playoffs, like a sleeper dark horse sort of team. The Lions are. Look, they're 3-3 this year. They should have beat Chicago when they lost 27-23. If I don't know what the receiver's name is, but if he doesn't botch the pass in the end zone, the Lions win that game. They were up 14-0 against the Saints, and the Saints ended up winning by 5 points. But the whole point is that they were in a game against New Orleans the entire time. They're 3-3. The only game they got blown out with was against the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. When last year the Lions played the Packers, the Lions had the lead the entire game of both games, and the Packers just won on a game-winning field goal both times. All I'm trying to say is the Lions match up very well against the Green Bay Packers. The game that they had this year against them when they got blown out, it just fell flat for them. The Lions are in the bottom half of pass and rush yards per game allowed. So maybe they could get a pass rusher, someone like Quentin Williams off the Jets, see where he lands and how he fits in the Lions scheme of things. Patricia, it was said before the season started, is playing for his job. So this is going to be this is the last year of his contract. So if he does well, he will get, an extension. And if he doesn't, he's out. I think the Lions are a very good, solid team, especially in that division. It's going to be a little tough with the Packers and the Bears, both over 500. But I like them as a sleeper team and to be buyers for the time going on. And I only had two, Shay, buyers.
I feel like the Lions are actually like a 1-6 team. Like they're 3-4, but I don't actually feel like watching them that they deserve even the record they have.
They're 3-3, Shay.
3-3.
They lost to the Bears, they lost to the Packers, and they lost to the Saints.
Okay. All right. Maybe I just saw that wrong somewhere. Regardless, to me, they just feel like a 1-5 type of team. They don't really. There was rumors that they were looking to trade Kenny Galladay to the Giants, which surprises me. I don't like. I know Gettleman's fighting for his job, but like, do not do that. We only have 5 draft picks, 3 in the top 100. We need draft picks. So to me, it's a little silly. I like him as a receiver, but they're just not in a position to go do that right now. Patricia's fighting for his job. Like, if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, like, he's gone. I feel like Patricia is the defensive version of Adam Gase, honestly. That's my opinion. Like, defensive expert who's, once he leaves Belichick, his defense sucks.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah, and coming into the season, Patricia's record coming into the season was 10-26-1 on the Lions. So, yeah, his time is definitely running short for sure. So, having said that, Shay, buyers and sellers are behind us, but what's in front of us is my favorite segment of the episode. It's our top 10. And I want you to start from your number 10 and go to number 1 and see how you rank. So why don't you get us started?
Okay. I'm keeping the Browns in there. Bounce back. They barely pulled out the game against the Bengals. Good call by you saying that the Bengals are going to keep it a lot closer than Vegas or how the point spread was showing. but they pulled it out. Baker actually played great after the first quarter. I have the Rams, number 9. They impressed me. Again, he beat me up this week on our picks. Dick didn't take his Viagra this week. So I have the Rams there at 9. I have the Cardinals at 8. I like the Cardinals better than the Rams right now. We talked about them a little bit. To me, Kyler Murray's the difference. I like Kyler Murray better than I like Jared Goff. Packers coming in at 7. They got beat up. I mean, there's actually a lot of good teams, and you'll see that when we get like further up the list. Like they got beat up by the Bucs, but then they recovered this past week. Ravens at 6. I feel like the Ravens are kind of just no one's really talking about them. They're just in the weeds. They're playing well. They've fallen down my list, not because of them, but because of other teams just playing, I think, very well this year. Seahawks, they blew that game against the Cardinals on Sunday Night Football. They come in at number 5 for me, but I still believe in Russ. I still believe in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, who had a insane game. I think he had 200 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns, just absolutely insanity. I believe in them. I believe eventually that defense is going to be average. And if they are average and they're winning games with them being absolute garbage right now, I think they're going to make a big jump. And Seattle just always feels like a second half team to me. They always get it going late. They've had some years they start out slowly and then they squeak in the playoffs. They're my number 5. Tennessee is number 4. We had them both really high last week. They fall just slightly because they lost to Pittsburgh. Believe in Pittsburgh. We will get to that shortly. I have the Bucs at 3. I think they are starting to come into form. I think the Buccaneers are definitively the best team in the NFC now, and we had them way down the list earlier. They really are starting to get it going. I know Godwin's out this week, but next week they probably get Godwin back. Antonio Brown will be eligible to play. They have Mike Evans. Gronk is starting to play a lot better. They're getting good contributions in the running game from Ronald Jones and Fournette. Brady's starting to look more comfortable. The defense is playing great. They're really getting after people, causing turnovers, getting sacks, getting pressure. They are a really, really good team. And if they keep playing like this, they're going to move up this list even farther pretty soon. Number 2, those Pittsburgh Steelers, baby. I keep talking about that defense. You said they didn't beat anyone. Then they destroyed the Browns. They were destroying the Titans before the Titans almost came back and won that game. But their offense is getting better and better each week with those receivers such as Claypool, Deontay Johnson. I like James Conner. I know a lot of people are kind of iffy on him. He's a solid B+ running back. He is fine. Big Ben is starting to play better, getting that rust off from being out all last year pretty much. And that defense is elite. My number 1, though, it's the reigning Super Bowl champs. We are kind of forgetting about them because they lost that Raider game a few weeks back. But their offense isn't even playing that great, honestly. It doesn't look very – they are playing great, don't get me wrong. But it just doesn't look as smooth and clean as last year. And they're still putting 30, 40 points up in everyone. They're bad. They're inconsistent. Offense is everyone else's best version. And their defense is very opportunistic, causing turnovers. I think we are underrating them. But then whenever they play someone good, like they play the Ravens, they destroyed them. So to me, we can't take them off the top until someone really proves it. Like one of these other teams, like the Steelers or Titans, goes in there and beats them type thing. I don't think we can take them off the top because they look better than they did last year overall as a team. And their offense is it's starting off in these games kind of slow and then taking off. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we cannot give up on them. They are the best team until proven otherwise. We may not be proven otherwise until the AFC Championship game or something, though. So we have a while. So what do you think? Where's your top 10? Let's hear it.
Let me just say this real quick. I agree with the Bucs being the best team in the NFC. I agree to an extent what you're saying about the Chiefs. I just think there's a couple better teams out there, and I'll get to it. Number 10, I have the 5-2 Cardinals. They have back-to-back primetime wins, back-to-back weeks going into their bye. I think they're in a very good spot right now. Kyler Murray is a baller. Number 10. Number 9, I'm not giving up on you guys. My Buffalo Bills that are going to the Super Bowl at 5-2. You don't have them in your top 10. I have the Bills at 9. I'm not giving up on them. Ugly win
All
against
right, Buffalo.
ugly win against a division rival on the road. You don't need Allen to do everything for you. Your defense stepped up. Your kicker stepped up. Buffalo, look at me, Buffalo. You guys are going to be just fine. You're at number 9. Number 8, I think you have them a little high at number 5. I have the Seattle Seahawks at 5-1. They have the worst defense through 6 weeks of the NFL season in history. They are too Russell Wilson driven. Everything relies on Wilson. The defense really isn't just that good. Number 7, we have them pretty much the same spot. I have the Los Angeles Rams at 5-2 at number 7. They lost 2 games that they lost were both by 1 possession. Even in the McVay and Goff era, the worst year that they had, they still went 9-7. They're going to be just fine. I think the Rams are still going to fire. Number 6, I have the 5-1 Green Bay Packers. Massive bounce back win against the Texans on the road, which I thought that game was going to be a lot closer. It wasn't, and they proved us why they should be in the top 10 conversation. Number 5, I hear you. I have the Baltimore Ravens flying under the radar at 5-1, and I think it's because the Browns and the Steelers are also above 500 in that same division, and Burrow's getting a lot of hype too, even though they're not a playoff contender. That division is just a lot more competitive than it was, so I think that's why the Ravens are kind of flying under the radar. They're still a very good team, well put together team. They're at number 5. Number 4, we have these guys at the same spot as well. The Tennessee Titans. I had them at number 1 last week. If they beat Pittsburgh, they would be in the top 3, maybe 2, maybe 1 still to me. But the fight that they had against the Steelers, I loved it. If they didn't have that fight in them, I would have put them lower. They could have, if Gostkowski makes the field goal, who knows what happens? They might have won the game. I have them at number 4. Number 3, I had the Kansas City Chiefs. They look like the Super Bowl team from last year. They're firing on all cylinders. The only reason why I don't have them as the best team in the AFC is because number 2, the Pittsburgh Steelers, are still undefeated. They're the best team in the AFC as of right now. Good call early in the season. You said that the Steelers were for real, and I see that now. Number 1, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that this is the scariest team in the NFL. They're 5-2, but they are firing everywhere. I mean, Brady looks like the old Brady. Brady to Gronk, that looks familiar. As you mentioned, Godwin's coming back. Antonio Brown was signed. This team just looks extremely dangerous. Ever since week 8 of last year after Tampa Bay's bye from last year, they've had one of the top 3 defenses in the league ever since. Their defense is on a roll. Their offense is absolutely firing up now. I think if Tampa Bay plays any team in the league right now, that they'll beat any team in the league. I think Tampa Bay is my number 1 team. Thoughts, Shay?
I'm really surprised about Tampa Bay. I see what you're doing. This is more like a long-term projection on them, like that they are going to be like they are starting to come around that corner and playing great, being firing on all cylinders. So I see that more as a projection. I might be with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. They're in my top 3. I really think this year more than others, there are like a solid like 6 to 7 Super Bowl contenders, and usually it's like 3 to 4 teams. Um, I can easily see like the Chiefs, Steelers, Titans, Ravens, Buccaneers, Packers, all playing in a Super Bowl, all potentially winning it. Like these teams are, oof, it's hard honestly making this list 5-1. We've been kind of flipping it a little bit the last few weeks, but that just means the playoffs are going to be that much more fun this year, and I'm really excited for that. I hope everyone stays healthy, so we get that. Because you and I, our teams are done. We're fighting for Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields at this point. So
That's
good
it.
list, man.
Yeah, you too, dude. You too. But that wraps it up, guys. Thank you for watching and tuning in and Too Many Men in the Huddle with yours truly, Cheech and
Hey, buddy.
Hey, thanks, guys. Like, subscribe, do what you got to do. Thank you for watching. Until next time, peace.